It's Tuesday afternoon, 4 p.m. in Switzerland, and it's 11 p.m. in Singapore. It's Space Café Web Talk time. Our Space Café Web Talk 33 minutes with Lynette Tan will begin soon. Thanks for joining us today for our talk about what's happening in space, a perspective from Asia, especially Southeast Asia. As always, we appreciate your participation and ongoing feedback. Any response is very valuable for us and helps us to improve. So feel free to share your responses with us. I'm Torsten Kriening, your host today and publisher of SpaceWatch.Global. We are a Switzerland-based online platform for information in and about space and new space activities in a geopolitical context. I know many of you are already familiar with our website, our bi-weekly and daily newsletters. We just renamed them into the Space Watcher, so to give it a much more cooler name, and the Space Café podcast. The latest episode, just released today, is another masterpiece of our great host, Markus Moslechner. And he talked with Walm Munsami, the CEO of SANSA, the South African Space Agency, about space innovations from Africa. Check it out. It's worth your time. We also keep our fan shop open for you online to support us actively and become a Space Watcher. The edition 1 has cool items for you, your friends, and the ones you love. As we just celebrated the Swiss National Day, we have a 10% discount when you're using Swiss 10 this week. Your support is absolutely needed to continue what we do. If you have missed any of our previous web talks, we have an archive available on our website in the events section and on YouTube. So, how can I describe my guest today the best way? As I have the privilege of selecting or inviting guests that I admire personally, it was not hard to choose her. She is the role model for space in this century. She is full of energy, full of passion, and has an absolute fantastic vision. And I think a bit of that she will share with us. So I'm grateful that she accepted my invitation to join our show today. With that, Lynette, welcome to the show.
Hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good unholy hours, wherever you are.
Absolutely. So let me give our audience a very brief overview about you and what you do. Lynette is the Chief Executive of Singapore Space and Technology Limited, SSTL, and she develops the organization's industry initiatives, leads its startup accelerator programs, and drives its consultancy business, identifying opportunities for government organizations, companies, and individuals to participate in the growth of the Asian space industry. In addition to running SSTL's very own space accelerator program for tech startups, she is also the managing partner of Project Cyclotron, an exclusive program with the Singapore government that assists early-stage deep tech space startups. Very inspiring. Lynette is active in promoting science, technology, and engineering, mathematics, interest among females. For her efforts and accomplishment, she received the Lacombe Visionary Award in 2018. She was recently recognized for her outstanding contribution to the science and technology industry by a leading women's publication. She was also recognized as a trailblazer on an inaugural Singapore 100 Women in Tech list in 2020, and so on and so forth. So as I said before, she is a perfect role model. And she has been also, I think, in the first cohort of the Karman Fellowship, if I remember correctly. She's a mother of 2 active children and enjoys hiking. That's what we know from her. With that, again, a very warm welcome to our Space Café. Let's kick that off. So,
thank you.
Many of you know I'm a proud Berliner, and I'm not tired to say that. Berlin became one of the top locations for startups, founders over the last few years. I see Singapore as well as a melting pot for innovations and in our case, the space industry. Can you give us a quick update on what's going on in your country, in your city, before we go deeper?
Thank you so much. That's a really good question to put things in perspective. Since we have global audience of from so many countries, it's good to talk about what's happening in Singapore. First of all, Singapore is a country smaller than 800 square kilometers, which means if you travel from the west coast to the east coast in a regular car at a regular rate, it would be less than 55 minutes. So it is not a big country. And therefore, when we talk about space technology and innovation, there is a lot of competition with terrestrial capabilities and satellite capabilities. We all know satellite provides very wide-ranging access to Earth observation. It provides telecommunication. It provides navigation and positioning. So why does a small country like Singapore require space technology? And it was really nice how Torsten led in about Berlin being a top location for startups and founders. Singapore also is a relatively cosmopolitan, international city. And therefore, when we look at the space ecosystem, we do look at it from an Asia Pacific point of view. And we are seeing many startups, and founders coming to set up operations in this part of the world, in Singapore, to look into the Asian and the Southeast Asian market. Mm-hmm. So I hope this gives you a good feel about the landscape of Singapore.
Absolutely, and we will dive deeper into it as we go, as mentioned. I mean, it is, as you said, a very vibrant environment. So maybe you can specify what you guys do at Singapore Space and Technology Limited. What is your role in terms of agency, permissions, regulatory? So as far as I know, Singapore does not have a dedicated space agency, but you have objects in space. So how does that work?
We have 15 to 16 satellites in space. A lot of it happened were launched in the last 5 years, and they were primarily small satellite. It is a vibrant environment. You're right, we don't have a dedicated agency. And SSTL is actually an independent, non-government organization, which means, thankfully, we don't deal with things like satellite permission and all the boring things and difficult and important things like regulation. There are many different authorities that look after it. You can imagine being a Singapore city-state. There is a good level of cohesion, amongst many agencies to integrate some of these requirements to launch the satellite. And we are learning as a country as we go along. There are three key things that SSTL does as a non-government organization. We are in a very comfortable, a very strategic, neutral, non-biased platform to connect people. We connect the established MNCs and space agencies with the Asia Pacific ecosystem. We connect startups with VCs, angels, institutional funds. So we do a lot of connecting new technologies, new space technologies with end customers, end users, especially in Asia Pacific. And therein we accelerate space technology adoption in this part of the world. You do see quite a lot of activities happening in Asia Pacific. In 2018, Australia announced its space agency, and then we see quite a bit of activities happening in Southeast Asia. And people are eager to consume space technologies, and SSTL does the role of accelerating space technologies for deployment, for use in various parts of Asia Pacific. And we harness and advance space technologies to benefit people, to make our lives better, We use it to benefit companies, organizations, for them to be more efficient, for them to do things during a pandemic that might require satellite space technologies. We do it to benefit the planet, achieving the sustainability goals, achieving collating information to help us make informed decisions to make the world better. So we accelerate space technologies in Asia Pacific. And then the fun part and the very gratifying part is in cultivating future talent pipeline. And that was one of our very, very early mission when we started 15 years ago. So you can imagine we had programs where we worked with 15 years old, 10-year-old children 15 years ago. Actually, now they're all young adults. And it's been really nice because they've been going to such doing so well with their career, with their lives. Sometimes they come back and they pay visit, like to grandma and grandpa, and oh, thank you for the opportunity, 15 years ago. Look at what we've done. Look at what we're doing. So, we've done it for so long that it's really very gratifying to see the talent that we've cultivated, and we continue to cultivate. Feed the pipeline for the activities here in Asia Pacific and globally.
Wow. Oh, that's super exciting. And I obviously, as a Switzerland-based platform, an independent platform, we like if somebody said, hey, we are independent, we are not following somebody's agenda, and being there to provide information and foster the market. And that's an absolute fantastic statement from you. So what would you see as the biggest strengths of Singapore in the space sector? And I take it that the space sector is not big, but you have assets in space. And what I like, what you mentioned, you didn't say the satellites or the satellite technology, space technology, what we use in a wider scale than just it is a satellite or it's a space station.
Yeah. So it's nice to
give me three strengths.
I think first of it, is being our ability to connect. So maybe sometimes I talk about SSTL, sometimes it's about Singapore, but being that neutral platform in connecting the ecosystem is important. You would be familiar, we run the Global Space and Technology Convention every spring, in February. And this is where we get Europeans, Germans, French, Italians, Americans, Chinese, Australians, Malaysians, Indonesians. They attend pre-COVID, right, to a platform where they feel there's an equal opportunity for sharing and a stage for everyone. So that's one key strength, the ability to connect and give people a safe platform to identify common ambition. The other strength is, because we are very small, we are also very nimble. So the ability to get different partners together to get the job done, to accelerate, to make sure we can find the customers, to make sure we can find the end users and the funds and the technologists. So that is also a key strength. So because we're very small, sometimes if I have to go to meet one company and then I have to meet a government agency and then I have to go and meet a VC and another company, it can all be done in 3 hours, right? And then now you have Zoom, so you just stay in your computer and table. But we do open up here and there in Singapore, and then we do have meetings under safe distancing guidelines, and it's really efficient to accelerate and have communication. And I think the other big strength is also, because there is a lack of legacy, we are able to jump into the new space, the commercial sector, relatively fast. In what they would call the old space, when we started 15 years ago, there's old space and new space. There was discussions about how government agencies would lead programs, they decide how things are done, they give out the budget. But how we, SSTL, has jumped in is commercial space, right? And we don't even have a space agency. So we were able to just go right into the commercial space sector and look at the commercial opportunities, which is why our accelerator program is, doing pretty decently well. We have 36 companies from all over the world they've got, like, some of them have raised a lot of funds. There's a combined valuation of more than US 500, $700 million. So it's that ability to accelerate. So I think these are some of the key strengths we have here.
Great. That's pretty cool. So I just want to take a few of these questions because they fit into nicely to what you just said. Mark asks, so how are space objects registered and regulated by the government? And I know you mentioned before you don't do that, but I'm quite sure you know the people and the structures that do for Singapore.
That's right. So I think it was a very interesting learning process for all of us. So we try to follow the best practices, and therefore, if a satellite is registered, the state does own the liabilities. The state does own it. So we do talk. We are signatory to the UNUSA. And, we do ratify some of the terms, and we're relatively new in it officially, but we do follow best practices, good responsibilities to be good global citizens. And we do that. A little bit of complication is we don't launch from Singapore, right? You can imagine 800 square meters, okay? It's not a lot of clearance. And we have 5 million. It's a very populous small city. So we do launch from other countries. I think that was also in one of the questions. So we do launch from India. And therefore, I think India has a lot of heritage with the PSLV, GSLV, and, they are also able to work with us in the registration, the guidelines, the right protocol. So I think that's certainly something the government and the regulatory bodies do look at and abide by.
Does Singapore has a space law?
It doesn't yet have a space law. We do have quite a few webinars surrounding space policy and space law. I think it's also this is a very nice question, Torsten. I think that a law is an enforcement. It's a clear stipulated guidelines on what we do. Underpinning it is common sense, right? It's just sometimes common sense becomes subjective for I don't know what reason. Then we go like, this is the law and that's what we do. A lot of the communications, education, leadership sharing is important, and that does take place around GSTC, where we have, you attend that, the Secure World Foundation attends that. We get subject matter experts, we get lawyers from Milbank to talk about the best practices. The State Department also attends. So this kind of knowledge that's being shared and imparted does guide us in making responsible, sound decisions. So even though for now yet, if I'm not mistaken, we don't have a space law, but I think we have been understanding what the best practices are globally and doing our very best to abide and follow. And I think therein lies that education, information, open sharing, platform where we learn from so many people, and it's already in our actions, even though it might not be in a paper.
Yeah, but what you just mentioned, education, outreach, or etc., that's the easy part of a space law. And but yeah, good luck. I mean, when it comes to liability, I think then you're at the core of it, and then how the governments want to deal with it. But let's move on. We mentioned in our opening that Singapore is embedded in the South Asian region, and you want to give us also an overview about the neighboring countries in terms of their space activities and how do you cooperate with them. Can you lead us on that, or please, because all these countries are much bigger than you. So.
Yeah, that's right.
We're Singapore.
That's right. Nothing has changed since the plate tectonics moved, right? So it's nothing new. They've always been bigger than us. And I think we do see, at least from SSTL's perspective, a lot of very friendly cooperation. I give you an example. It does make people nervous, so I'm risking a lot saying it here, but I thought it was a really nice example. We had a startup Equatorial space system. It's very famous. It's very international. People know them very well. Simon, the CEO, is very passionate. He's a very, very good man. And he needed to try out his first proof of concept, right? He needed to send something into space. And actually, he had friends in Malaysia who helped him. And so and during COVID with the pandemic, he had so many help from the universities, from his friends, and the space fraternity in Southeast Asia. It's like, we are connected by land, so move your rocket into Malaysia to launch it. And he did it. And people, SSTL was very happy. His friends was very happy that they managed to get certain traction and success and data points that they needed. Otherwise, it's really hard for him to get the data and the evidence of what his product could do. So I think that was a very good collaboration between the community when we don't get too political and too sensitive. So the JAXA also does many community sharing and platform with Southeast Asia. They have hub in space experiments, and SSTL, we also run the International Space Challenge, and we get participation from Thailand, from Indonesia, from different parts of Southeast Asia. And just last weekend, I was with the SGAC ASEAN group on some sharing on education and what we do in Southeast Asia. I think at the community level, there is a lot of cooperation, genuine cooperation, helping each other, leveraging on the strength, right? Because we couldn't launch, our startup couldn't launch a satellite, and then our friendly neighbor said, come on over, right? I think it's a really strong testimony of what we can do if we really, work towards a common mission of succeeding together.
Absolutely. No, I like what I heard, and that Simon is a good friend. So we had him in a podcast, I think, beginning of last year already, and following very closely about his success. And saw his rocket launching, at least. Unfortunately, not personally, but So let's focus back on Singapore. What space projects should we know all and be aware of? So what are the projects you say, hey, look at that, that's pretty cool from the outside world? I mean, for whatever reason, for funding, customers, so whatever. So.
I look at the things that everyone is achieving, going to Mars, sending the probe, and then there's all this, developments with the space station, whether it will be there or not. And I think these are all very big, inspiring global initiative. So where I see things happening in Singapore is certainly in some of these big projects we don't necessarily take part in, but it is a growing and evolving market in Southeast Asia, in Asia Pacific. And therefore, the commercial part of the space becomes really interesting because like I said, we jump right into this commercial part. And we have 30 over startups in our accelerator program in Singapore, in a country with no manned mission, no human space flight. I saw that being asked because it is a place to try your best to make money and use your technology to benefit people, to benefit organizations, your customers, to benefit government, NGOs, to promote, social responsibilities, leveraging space technologies. It is a hub for commercializing space technologies and for commercializing many deep technologies. So I think that part is really exciting. We know a few weeks ago, we had space tourism, right, with billionaires going into space. And that, again, is a private endeavor. It's not about government mission. It's about commercial mission, what the commercial companies can do. So I think we are right in the heat of commercial activities. And where SSTL comes in is, trying to connect and put the different pieces together to say, okay, you're looking at this technology. I think it can be applied in this way. So, for example, the Siren, The Singapore Land Authority has actually has our research and development team that has a siren technology that uses GNSS, so Global Navigation Satellite Systems, and it does precision monitoring for construction, which is a very interesting use, right? And we actually had an innovation challenge where during the COVID, where we had young Singaporeans think about how they can use this space technology embedded in our Singapore network. And they had a new idea where they integrated it into a cane to help blind people maneuver indoor and outdoor. So they put different technologies together to come up with an idea to help benefit people who cannot see, using a satellite technology that was already, integrated into the Singapore network. So again, you see, we're jumping straight into how can I use space technology for everyone? How can I make it popular, commercializable, where there is an opportunity? So that's where I think it is really exciting in Singapore.
And I think it's fair to say that you have also a number of the established big players in Singapore. I mean, I think Airbus or Spire is there, SAS, of course, ST. I mean, where does ST stands for? Yeah, Singapore Technologies just acquired, I think, Newtech and
iDirect, Newtech,
thank you.
Link. Yeah, that's right.
So, I mean, these are giants already in Singapore. There's one question that is also related to what I have in mind to ask next. So it's a funding, of course. I mean, with all the space project comes funding, or is funding required? So how are Singapore space projects funded? Or the question of Pat, thank you for that, is what's the space investment appetite in Singapore and the surrounding countries or ongoing COVID? So maybe you can
so I will look at it, from the government side, and then looking at it from a private funding side. The government does fund research into space technology. So we talk about the 15, 16 satellites. Most of them were funded by the National Research Foundation's budget. So they are they were satellites coming out from research programs in the universities, NTU and the NUS. So that's where the government budget does go into research, technology, payload development. And then on the part about the appetite for space investment, I do have to confess we are not Berlin and we are not Europe, NASA, US, where there's a lot of space heritage, there's a lot of space legacy, you have astronauts, more than one. So people understand the market for space technologies more intuitively, and therefore the appetite to invest in these economies are higher. So Singapore, when we have a startup and they seek investment for space, it's not as easy. Having said there are a lot of VCs. They might not specialize in space, but they do invest into deep technology or technology, and then they might put a little bit is an understatement. They will put some budget for space technologies, but you don't get a space fund, you don't get like Space Angels or Space Ventures, but you would get a typical fund, 500 startup, Golden Gate Venture, then they do Wavemaker, they do invest some of their money into space startups. It is not so straightforward, but it's not impossible, and we do see a good, decent traction for fundraising activities in Singapore. And you talk about one of these exciting things in Singapore, maybe not so exciting for you, but very exciting for me, is we also have project Cyclotron, which is in partnership with CapVista. And CapVista is a strategic investment arm of the Singapore government. And we run an accelerator program for them for deep technologies because they just need a lot more help, right, for the gestation period, the product development period. And we're looking at helping them expand into the US. So I think that's very exciting for me to see Singapore technologies going to US, which has a very strong heritage for for space technology development in the government and private sector. So that's very exciting for us to see our startups going places. And what's also exciting is actually in our startups, they are not all Singaporeans or Singapore entities. Like Berlin, Singapore is very international, it's very cosmopolitan. So I think of the 35, 36 startups, 40%, if not 60% of them are overseas, from New Zealand, from Uzbekistan, from Costa Rica. They're all from all over the world.
It's a nice place, and as you said, or as you described it, innovation does not know borders. I just came up with it. So
that's right. That's right.
So I mean, there's a foundation for that, also in your country, I would say, and Singapore's education ranks one of the best in the world. I mean, over years, when the OECD is doing their reports or a PISA test or whatever it is, Singapore is always, I think, fighting just against Finland or so on the top position. So does that have an impact on space, on the space-related initiatives, on funding? So, and what are strong areas of this education in the country?
So I think it has a positive impact, because when we caught the space bug, Singapore, I don't think we took very long to get onto it and get our action and get our hands dirty, right? When we caught the space bug, like I said, in one of the first commercial or research satellite was in 2011, and then since then from 2011 to 2015, we built 6 satellites in a small country, like I said, this probably the size of Berlin, I forget. And then after that, almost every other year, we're churning out quite, very interesting payloads to be tested. From quantum all the way to radiation hardening, then new propulsion technologies. So the rate of the acceleration is fast. And I think when we had our startup program, we do have a decent base for deep technologies with good math, good science, good principles, and it wasn't too challenging for the startups to find local talent or people in Singapore. Again, Singapore is also quite international, so we have talent from all over the world. And the struggle comes with the numbers, right? Because we need lawyers and doctors and politicians to do all the important things. So then you don't get too many for scientists and space scientists. And Singapore is also a huge biotech, medtech hub as well. So there's a lot of competition for the global talent, but it's in relative abundance. So I think that was one of the positive impact, right? When you talk about the Singapore education, and I think that focus, being strong in the PISA ranking for math and science is definitely very helpful. So, hopefully we have more people coming to Singapore, living here, and then more Singaporeans having babies as well, to grow the talent pipeline.
Absolutely, and you have two.
I've done my job.
New talent.
And a boy and a girl, so.
Absolutely. Perfect. So my last question. So what will the future, I mean, it's now time for the crystal ball thing. What will the future of Singapore hold for us when it comes to space? So what is the outlook, your outlook for the next 5 to 10 years to keep it reasonable? So do we see Singaporeans on the moon, or are you planning?
I have 2 kids, right? So I was going to jump into that. I'd love to put them on the moon,
I mean, just because you can, or just for
just to get them out of the planet, away from me.
Okay, got it.
Like, yeah, it's a very nice trip. See you sometime. So yeah, kidding and not kidding. I mean, children are very mesmerized by moon, planets, and the stars. So yeah, I do encourage them that they should go to the moon, right? I think there are opportunities. We do have young, talented, ambitious Singaporean who do look to the stars, and I think also maybe the ingredients are right that they feel they could do more. But it's not about country. We try not to be too nationalistic. You know, I think we're all proud of where we're from. We're proud of our history, our heritage, you know, for everyone here. But I think the way to do it is really to be more open-minded and collaborative, and not, you know, start putting the borders up, the imaginary borders up, and say, okay, you know, I want a Singaporean on the moon, I want this on the moon. Because they always say when they go to space and they look back, there are just no borders. So I think that's what I would look towards Singapore, in that how do we work together collaboratively as a community to do things, you know, tapping onto our natural strength and doing it together, because a lot of times the beauty is in the journey itself, instead of, you know, trying to get there first and then what.
Still, putting your feet on the moon is something special, I would say, or even it's not the first. But no, I leave it because I say these were famous words, and I like what you said. So as we are getting the warnings already from our production team, as always, so why not continue with nice traditions, Frank? So I'm afraid we have to come to an end. Even so, I would love to continue our talk. It's a very inspiring talk for me, but I mean it's bedtime also in Singapore. So I hope, and I'm quite sure we will talk with each other again. So and we will follow up the space developments in Asia, or in our future Space Café web talks, or in our magazine, and are also very happy and very delighted to announce that our Lynette accepted another role, to be the host for our upcoming Space Café Singapore. So all of you in the audience, we keep you updated, and then we will dig into our Singaporean projects more and more and deeper, and use this platform also in Singapore. So before we finish for today, do not miss next week on the 12th of August, we have another episode of Moriba's Vox Populi with Professor Russell, with Daniel Woods from the MIT, and Michael Weber. And they will be discussing the environmental protection, or climate change, and their correlation playouts with orbital space. And I know that the environmental protection is also very high up for Singapore on the agenda. So I think that's a very interesting talk Moriba, or discussion Moriba will have with his guests. On the 17th, so in 2 weeks, and you might recognize next week, we will take another short break. As of 17th, we will continue our 2-week cycle. On the 17th, I have the pleasure to talk with a young space lawyer, a doctoral researcher, Antonino Salmeri, and talk about his own journey from Sicily through space via space law. And he's a fascinating young fellow, it's worth to listen to him, how his career started. And then on the 19th, we have at 4 p.m., not at 6 and at 6 p.m. Central European time, our next Space Café Brazil, hosted by the wonderful Ian Grossner. And he will talk with Clécio Nardin, the director of the Brazilian National Institute for Space Research. And of course, as it is a Brazilian Space Café, he will have this talk in Portuguese for all of you that speak Portuguese. And for our German-speaking audience, we have on the 24th and 4 p.m. a very special Space Café with Sabine van der Recke about the plans for the offshore spaceport in the North Sea that we have here in Germany. All these events are going to be or are on Eventbrite already, and as always, we would like to hear your feedback, so please check in with us on Twitter, on Facebook, LinkedIn, or email. Don't forget Don't forget to sign up to our daily and our bi-weekly newsletters. As you remember, this is a Space Watcher. And if you like to treat yourself with something special, become a Space Watcher today. Your support will help us. Take your credit card, visit our fan shop at shop.SpaceWatch.Global. It can't be more easy for you to be part of this family. So thank you very much for your interest today. And yes, it is just in the chat. We have this 10% discount this week due to the Swiss National Day. So thank you, Lynette, for this absolute inspiring talk and being my guest. And thanks again to the entire team behind the scenes for doing their great and seamless job week by week again. I hope you all will stay safe and stay healthy. Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you next week. In the meantime, visit our website, follow us on social media, and don't forget, become a Space Watcher. Thank you very much.